everyone, a very warm welcome to the third in a three-part webinar series all about how you pick up, of course, the all-important award trophy. And I'm really lucky to be joined by three amazing people in our industry. And really, I want you to use this time to sort of question them around, how you start an entry, how you get their attention, and fundamentally, what do you include and what don't you include when you're putting that together. So firstly, welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining me today.
Great to be here.
Fab. Well, I'm going to ask each of you to intro yourself, and what I'd quite like you to do is tell us who you are, but also put a bit of context in it. Tell us what of our awards you've judged. So Andy, let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. So I'm Andy Dugan. I'm a global business partner at Geometry Global and head up experiential across the network. I've judged quite a few of the Drum Experience Awards. I think I've done 3 now. I was chairman at the end of 2018. So yeah, I have been through the rounds quite a few times, both submitting awards quite a few times over the years, but also judging both as a chairman and also as a judge. So yeah, got quite a few thoughts on what I've picked up and noticed over the years.
Cool, welcome. And Shah, let's go next.
I'm Shah. I'm business director at Evolve Out of Home. We're a startup out of home specialist agency that launched just over a year and a half ago. I've spent the last 10 years or so specifically working in out of home, and previous to that at an experiential agency. I was delighted to be part of the Out of Home Awards last year, and it's lovely to be back here today sharing some insights.
Thank you. And Jerry.
Hi, I'm Jerry Beerus. I'm an executive creative director at Imagination. We're a global brand experience agency. And yeah, I've been really lucky to have judged Drum, Campaign, and also Cannes and D&AD in the digital design and experiential categories. So it's been a really fascinating journey watching how sort of, awards are submitting awards ourselves and how the different sort of sectors and industries all work together.
Well, welcome all again. And Jerry, I was going to say, hopefully that means that ours was the best judge. I'm sure you were going to say that.
Of course.
Yeah, that might be a question shortly. So what would be really good is when we do these things, I think it's quite nice for people who are joining to kind of get a feel of what it's like to judge, because many people tuning in haven't ever judged an awards before. So could you guys maybe give a bit of I suppose, context around how you go about it, what kind of situation you're in when you're maybe reading the entries? You don't need to get into fine detail about what you're drinking and keep that very private. But yeah, just to give people an idea of the kind of what you through in the process. So Shah, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I was delighted to be part of the Out of Home Awards last year and joining the judging panel. And, the Drum is such a well-respected and key publication within our industry that having validation from you guys, I think, means a huge amount to everybody involved. So it was just a pleasure to be part of the process. It's also a great opportunity for me to take time out of my day-to-day and really reflect on all the amazing work that's happening across both the industry and the globe. There is a lot of reading that goes into it, but it's just a delight to hear all of the storytelling that is going on across the globe. And we had a lot of fun. So it's been an extremely rewarding process for me, and especially kind of working across the out-of-home industry and being part of the out-of-home judging.
And Jerry, what about you?
Yeah, I think again, it was a real pleasure judging this year, and I think the most exciting thing for me is you really get to see the zeitgeist, like what took place this year, and there always are a number of projects which remarkably all follow a certain path, but it's really exciting, and I think that the first thing is really you get this, you're almost overwhelmed with kind of the amount of entries, and you have to spend sort of as much time as you can, but try and be relatively efficient in the way that you sort of make your way through the entries to get to that shortlist. And then the fun begins when you all get together. We all have different viewpoints. Certain projects that we really love, ones that we think should win, and so you then have your sort of time to debate, and everyone gets to have their point of view, and eventually you get to that winning point. So it is a lot of fun. It is a lot of work, but it's great to see the sort of body of work that gets presented across the industry every year.
Absolutely. And Andy, then, if you want to talk us through that journey, then how do you even kick off looking at the entries?
Yeah, I think just picking up on a point that Jerry just said is, I think most award categories you go into have a similar format, but I think it's worth, people that are listening on this or watching this and thinking about how they write awards, it's worth just picking up on that point that there's usually a couple of stages in the judging. So everyone, I think, when they think about judging pictures, everyone in a big group, because it's what you see in the publications, whether it's Campaign or Drum, you see the photographs of all the judges together. But that's the second stage. That's once you get to a short. It's really important to recognise that before that, there's usually a long list process, which is where you as individuals are given a certain number of categories. That's where as Shara and Jerry say, that usually you might get 20 or 30 entries, maybe more per category. So you're having to go through sometimes maybe 200 to 300 entries. And I think that's really important to know, because the way that you digest that and respond to that is very different to when you're in a room, when you're feeding off the other judges. When you're on your own, you're having to get through a huge volume. It's almost like, when you're recruiting someone for a role, a new role, and you've got lots of CVs. What you'll tend to do is a relatively fairly quick pass initially, and spot the ones that stand out. And I think that's really important when you're thinking about how you write an awards entry. Recognizing to get through that first stage, you've got to have something that, that someone can get it really quickly. Yes, the detail needs to be for the second stage, but to get the detail and get a feel for the entry and what made that campaign so spectacular, it's really important to try and get that across really quickly. So I think that's a really important part. Yeah. I mean, I can't vouch for anyone else. Combination of commuting, sitting at home with a glass of wine, work, so it's not about you're not focused on it, but you have to recognise the mindset and the environments that people might be.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then the fun starts. Once you got down to short lists, then you getting together with your colleagues, side, and debating and having healthy debate and sort of getting your point of view of why you think a piece of work stands out, and that's really.
So picking up on that point there, so you make quite a valid point about, it's you're marking the homework, you've got lots of entries, you need to stand out, kind of pace to sort of intrigue your interest. Okay, let's talk about that. So people are probably watching thinking, well, yeah, that's great. I'm one of many, fabulous, so that's good. So what can they do to stand out? Like, what, for me, I think a lot of it is down to the exec summary, I have to say, but I would love to hear your view and what you think. So Sha, let's kick off with you on this one.
I think for me, and as Andy kind of touched on it, I think that first paragraph and those first few lines are so key. And I think, entries that can really sell the campaign in within the first few lines are doing well. You've really got to engage the judges from early on and want us to keep reading and almost feel, make the judges feel a little bit jealous that we weren't part of that work. So yeah, for sure, that first paragraph is just so important and capturing engagement right from the outset.
Yeah. Okay. And Jerry?
I tend to watch the film first if there is one. Maybe it's just me, but I think I sort of, the principle of what we do is we try and tell really complex stories in really simple ways, and I think the film is almost the best way of doing so. And if that captures my attention, then I will go on to read a lot more. If it doesn't, then I'll generally pass. But I think a really well put together film, which really the drama that really sort of sells the problem, and then the solution that just makes you go, how did they think of that? That's so simple. That's brilliant. I really love this project. For me is kind of that killer moment where, I sort of think this project has merit, or maybe it's not strong enough for this year's awards.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very valid point if people have a video. I mean, there's a lot of people that won't produce the video because they maybe don't have the budgets and they don't. So it's just to reassure people they will not be penalised if they don't have a video. If you've got one, fabulous. You will continue to read the entry, won't you, if you don't have a video?
Sorry, yeah, I should have mentioned that. And to be honest, half the time it's not about having a big budget video. Sometimes, I think sort of in some of the examples today, for instance, they were really simple, but they were just a really great way of sort of capturing the idea in a sort of 1 to 2 minute summary.
Yeah, I think it's all about, isn't it, engaging you from the core, just from the very beginning. Andy, do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I think. I mean, again, it's something that you'll see in the example that we're going to share shortly, in terms of a good award entry. I think the other thing you can do, an exec summary, absolutely captivate from an exec summary, video and interesting content. The other thing is you get a feel straight away from an entry from the tone of voice and the way it's written. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of entries, and I've been guilty of doing them myself in the past. Is you're asked to do an awards entry and you're like, oh, it feels like a chore, and you kind of got to sit down there, and quite often you're not the person who worked on the campaign, you're writing on behalf of someone else. I think the awards entries that feel like they're an extension of the campaign are the ones that really stand out. If you've got, to Jerry's point, if you've got a really engaging insight, if you've got a really cool tone of voice and an interesting kind of proposition, that's center at the heart of the idea behind what you delivered, and whether that be out of home, experiential, digital, whatever it is, then you should be bringing that to life in your awards entry as well. See it as an extension of the campaign, because then the tone of voice is really compelling and you get a feel for it. And I think that's really interesting. That's another way to stand out. So even if you don't have a video, think about how you write and the tone of voice and how you articulate it in a way that's really interesting and engaging.
Okay, that's a really valid point. And for anyone watching, please put in your questions in the chat function so we can just fluidly go through them as we go. Now, I suppose that kind of comes down to, we're talking about different types of budgets. I'd quite like to touch on that for a minute. And really, I suppose to give reassurance to people when they don't have, and we are going to show an example, which I will reveal in a second. But, when it comes to the kind of large and small budgets, what would you say to people who are a bit kind of like, oh, I didn't do a multi-dollar pound campaign. So anyone who, I will throw it out to see whoever wants to pick that up.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Jerry.
No, I don't mind. All I was going to say was, I think we judge ideas, not budgets, and whether it's a £5,000 budget or a £5 million budget, we generally they'll split those into different categories anyway. But for the most part, it's was it a great idea, and did it deliver on its mark, and did it engage, and did it have impact, and if that's the case, then budget is sort of irrelevant to us.
Yeah, and Andy.
Yeah, no, it was kind of a variation on the theme with that with Jerry, which is, an idea is an idea. The idea isn't the budget. Yeah, of course, whether it enables you to justify, a particular venue, or, whether it's go from B-list up to AAA artists, whatever it might be, budgets can obviously make something even better. But fundamental is the idea, and the one that we often talk about when people are talking about, talk about little ideas that are big thinking is, when Richard Branson launched, he was one of the very first to do in-flight entertainment. And when he launched his in-flight films, you could have done this big, huge budget, point. But actually, one of the best things I think he did was to say, right, when we show films in flight, we're going to serve ice cream and popcorn at the same time. Tiny little thing, but it turned it into an experience. From just watching a film in flight, it turned it into a movie experience. So, it's thinking along the lines of that, very much what Jerry just said. It's about the idea.
Yeah.
About the scale of the budget.
And I think just to add, from an out-of-home point of view, exactly the same, small budgets, big budgets, and quite often actually the smaller budgets and smaller campaigns sometimes are the most rewarding. So I think it just goes back to that storytelling and narrative point of view.
Yeah.
If you've got a great story, tell it, shout about it.
Yeah, I suppose as well, it's a bit engaging, isn't it? The audience in such emotive ways. I mean, I remember particularly, I don't know if they ever ran in England, but my favourite ads for Out of Home were the Irn-Bru ads.
Yeah.
The old stuff, the old stuff. I won't repeat some because I don't know if they're PC anymore to talk about. But I really, really like them. I watch them occasionally online, so there you go. But that kind of stole my heart years ago, and it still got it. I still absolutely love it. Do you think when people put together entries, right? So you could have an amazing entry, right? And everybody knows, if you know the entry, it's really good. But sometimes when people write the reports, they don't always tell the good story. Kind of some of it gets missing. Did you know what I mean? So how would you sort of, what would your advice be around that in terms of how people would shape that narrative? Sha?
I think, the strong, well-structured entries often have some really clear pillars throughout, and whether that's starting with objective through to your, strategy and execution and then results. And I think distilling really important facts throughout to bring that story to life. I think, the storytelling shouldn't be limited to just the brand or the media. And I think it needs to really elegantly bridge those two together. And I think also bringing some human touch and emotion throughout, make the judges laugh, make them cry. Some of the best entries that I've read have often brought in a lot of emotion and passion, which is always a standard for me.
Yeah, when it gets you there, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm engaged. So what I'm going to do now, I want to play a video that we want to discuss, and it was Flying Object for Scottish Twitter. Now we're going to go on mute, because if not, you're going to hear a horrendous noise, and then it'll take 2 seconds and this will play, yeah?
So this is the Scottish Twitter Visitor Centre. It's the living embodiment of one of Twitter's most entertaining communities.
I did enjoy it, and the little map of Scotland where all the different tweets were from.
I really like the timeline, just showing the transition between early Twitter and Twitter modern day.
All the tweets are funny, but the way it's laid out is really good. I like the portraits with different tweets, that's funny as well.
100% my favourite thing is this little dog. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen.
We really wanted to celebrate who we think are like a community of users that really understand how to use Twitter. This is the comedy festival, and we think that the Scottish Twitter community are funnier than some of the best jokes that I've seen at the Edinburgh Fringe ever.
Even writ large with interactive material was funnier than the original tweet. You open up a door and then there's some object in front of you contextualizing the tweet. That was good, that was funny.
I like that wee sign over there about the grand cross off all the ones that are dead, no? Reminds me of my mum, she's get to a certain age now. But aye, smashing.
Welled up, just walking around listening to everybody just laughing and enjoying tweets the way they never could normally.
So there you go. That was, I mean, if you understood the entry, well done, because I don't know if you understood half of what people were saying in that. So I fully understood it. So yeah, let's talk around that. So Jenny, do you want to give us a kind of, what's the stock tour of that entry, kind of what it was about, and why you liked it so much?
Yeah, well, I thought, I mean, firstly, you know, there are different ways. You mentioned, Shai, about sort of structuring the entry, and what was quite nice here was it was told through the eyes of those that participated, and which is always a good thing, because then, you know, you're judging the reactions of those that actually got to experience the entry. In terms of its cadence, I mean, it was very much a tour, wasn't it? It started off with, you know, like, how did this experience play out? And you went through the space. You had a little bit of the insight kind of as you went along, and it really just talked about the joy of the experience, and I think, you know, that was enough to kind of really capture your attention, and then go on to read more about how it worked.
Yeah, I think I mean, I'm in the fortunate position that we work with Twitter in a number of markets, and to know them very well. And I think you know, one of the big things they struggle with is there's a lot of negative perceptions about Twitter now. You know, it's associated with, you know, with political parties in the US, it's associated with trolling. And actually, by tapping into the micro communities, these really niche communities, which is what you've got with this Scottish Twitter community, it really brings out the human, to your point, Jerry, there's sort of the human nature at the heart of it. And there's a lot of humor in there. And then actually taking what's a very flat media and bringing that to life. If you look at the success of things like the Jimmy Kimmel celebrities read out nasty tweets, which is just brilliant. They're brilliant. So there's a lot of fun, and you know, you can really bring to life and sort of bring that emotional side of it. And I think that for me is a really important part about this campaign, why it really sort of came to life. And you know, it was completely thought end to end. You know, the fact that they had a physical destination manifestation of it, experience, the fact that all the communications, it was all in tone. It really almost celebrated and put on a, you know, it was almost like, you know, it was shining a light on these micro communities. And I think it was a beautifully simple idea. Give them a platform to shine, timed around the fact that it was in the Edinburgh Fringe as well. I think it just really well thought out, and you know, precision execution end to end as well.
Yeah, I think what you were saying as well about, you know, they continued the campaign and they kept the tone of voice in the entry. Like, how did they do it? Did they use lots of Scottish words, or how did they keep the tone?
Words in there. There was, I mean, there's some little things like, you know, they'll throw them in when you don't expect them in. It's another reason why I kept on reading. You know, it's quite a long entry, and you'll be reading it, and you'll go through a bit where you're talking about some results, and then all of a sudden there'll be this. What are they talking about? You know, there's a bit where some Scottish guy saying, you know, do crabs look at us and think we walk sideways, which is brilliant. You know, made me giggle and laugh. But it's got all the kind of, you know, it's got the localism in the language as well. So they peppered the entry with the tone of voice, and then these odd these odd little, sound bites from the Twitter community, which made it just really rewarding to read it as well. It's really interesting. I mean, I think one of the things they clearly did was whoever works on the awards entry was involved in the campaign. And I think that's a definite insight that's, if you want to write really good awards entries, have the team that were involved in the campaign involved. And ideally, if you've got a copywriter, use the same copywriter as well. I think it really stands.
100%.
So I suppose, just to sort of play devil's advocate in that, so that's very good. When you come from an agency world, you've got these, lots of people at your disposal. There's a lot of people that are not in that position, and they have to write it themselves. There'll be, I speak to a lot of marketing teams, and the creative people hardly get involved because they kind of say to marketing, you just run it, and they're kind of like, what do I do? So, I mean, I'm not, they're very good, and a lot of marketers who enter, are picking up the trophies. But what advice would you give to people when it comes to this kind of like, say someone who's relatively far removed from the campaign has to write the entry? How might they go about making sure that it really touches on the essence of what they want to deliver? Like, i.e., how do you go through the sign-off process? So, Shad, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, I think if you can involve the client, I think there's a real benefit having the client involved from the entry writing process. And I think, you therefore feel that it's a very kind of joined up and joint piece of work. And then fingers crossed, a joint win. I think, my background is client service based. And I think that actually, if you've got an entry that really shows client focus and an agency that understands its client needs, then that will really stand out.
Yeah. Anyone else, Jerry or Andy? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I think one of our I think insights over the years is we almost try and think about the entry before we even deliver the project, so that you always have that in mind. Even from an asset collection perspective, like what are you going to film during that project to then turn into a case study to then submit an award. So I think it is really important to be involved throughout, even if you're not part of the creative team, you are part of the marketing team, but to have some sort of access to the project kind of during its lifespan, I think really does help those who are actually putting that entry together and writing those final ones.
I think.
Yeah, I suppose also on you go, Andy.
No, just linking back to the initial question as well, saying we're very fortunate that we've got creative communities that we can tap into, and heavyweight firepower strategists who can rationalise why an awards entry should be winning. If you were either working at an agency where you don't have the luxury of that available, or your client side and entering an award as well, I think the simple thing is just to say, just find the best storyteller. Find someone that is really good at crafting a story and can take people on a journey. And also, it's a little bit of hard work up front, but don't just sort of look at a campaign and then try and write it. Just try and immerse yourself into that world a little bit, because if and the Scottish Twitter one was an easy one because it was really engaging, and you get it straight away just by reading it. But you can imagine if they were entering that directly, and that it would be very easy to say, look, this is what we're trying to get across. This is the insight, the heart of it. And or find someone that can tell the story, and just take a little bit of time up front just to invest in, putting your feet in the shoes of the people that actually created that campaign.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And the only other thing I would add, and I'm not without trying to digress, but the storytelling is so important, because it's as much about what you don't put in there as what you do put in there. And I think, sometimes you can get carried away and think every bit of information has to go into that case study. And, as a judge, you're kind of overwhelmed with all of these really complicated components that went into it, when I think it's about cutting through all of that and telling a really simple, really concise reason why this project delivered on its objectives and why it was so beautifully simple. So I think, that storyteller component, whether that's kind of after or during, is really, really important.
I suppose it's about being concise but not sparse.
Exactly.
Like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But I suppose it's pulling out the kind of key killer kind of points that are going to kind of make the jury go, wow, I'm interested, I'm not bored, I'm really engaged. The when it comes to sign off as well, what's the value, do you think, in getting people that have never seen the campaign before, so they don't know anything about it? It's just a family friend, whatever it might be. as long as I've kind of got some kind of recollection of the industry or what it might be. But what, if you kind of used that tactic before, getting people to read entries and maybe they've had nothing to do with it? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I think, getting an onlooker to feedback is always good. And I think it's always good to make sure you've set aside enough time for that.
Yeah.
And for double checking and triple checking of the work, because one of my pet peeves is definitely spelling and grammar. So I think making sure that you've had time to have checked, and that attention to detail really does shine through when you're reading lots and lots of entries.
Yeah, but we've had entries actually where people enter into categories and they put either the wrong awards. So they put and it does not even a drum award. So they might put in a awards or a different category title, or and actually get on to that point, people that put things in various categories. Now, as a jury, I don't know if a lot of people realise this, because sometimes when the nominations come out, they're in somewhere else than what they entered. And people are like, why did you move me? So I want to talk about that a little bit, about how judges have the authority. If they feel that something is not quite in the right place, they might move them, but they can only move them the once. You couldn't give people multiple entries. So if any of you have been in a position where you had to do that?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are more obvious than others. Some of them are just simple. They clearly have made a mistake, so we'll help them on the journey rather than penalise them. I've had 2 years ago, there was an agency that had entered. I think they meant to enter it into the agency team of the year, but put it into the venue team of the year. So that's an obvious one where you just say, okay, that's clearly entered into the wrong category. In which case, it's just a recommendation. We flag it up with yourself or whoever's day. But then I've also seen that there was a couple where you've had some way, particularly around the slightly sort of grey area of digital and physical experience, which is obviously not great given where we are right now and where the sectors are evolving to. But I saw entries that were put into a digital experience when it was like, that's not a experience, that's a physical experience, but that has a digital overlay on it. So I think and then it's a debate, and then it becomes a debate. But some people say, no, I think it is a digital experience. So the jurors will always want to try and find a way for an entry to stay in contention. So sometimes that will be, it's in the wrong category, and if it was in a different category, it would perform even better.
Yeah. And Shah, for you, obviously for out of home, you would assume that was quite obvious. We were to submit things, but do you feel that people do get a bit confused, and what advice might you give them?
Yeah, I think, and again, it kind of goes back to that planning, but spending enough time up front really going through the different categories and ensuring that your piece of work is answering those category questions.
Yeah.
I think, I don't have a problem with seeing, the same campaign being entered into, multiple categories, but I think that piece of work has to be rewritten for the category. A simple copy and paste, we do notice that. So yeah.
It's not going to cut it. And so I'm going to ask you a morals question, Jerry. So in the out of home market, when I MC a lot of the shows, it's literally the most collaboration I've ever seen in any award show, because it's so many companies have worked on a piece of work and they all get credited. But sometimes in awards, lots of companies are not credited. And we had a situation a couple of weeks back where someone had contacted us saying, yeah, we would like our name or credit on the entry. And we were saying, well, we can't really change someone's entry. If the entering company wants it changed, then yeah, of course, but we're not going to start tampering with it, because we just do not do that. So from your point of view, Jerry, what do you think in terms of if other people worked in a campaign with you, would you credit them if you paid for the entry?
Yeah, I mean, we tend to have a policy of just crediting everybody.
Okay.
I think we should all celebrate in the success of a project. If everyone's instrumental in the development of that project, then they should all be rewarded for that. I think when you start sort of excluding or ostracizing certain people, then it just becomes a very just a weird situation. So yeah, our policy is credit everyone, and therefore you don't upset anyone, and everyone's happy. So I would recommend that. There's no kind of downside to that, in my opinion. I think if you've worked on it, then you should be rewarded.
Yeah, because some people were saying in the last one we did this, they were saying actually if there's collaboration, something that can be looked on very fondly in an entry, because you think, wow, these guys collaborated and they achieved so much by pulling all the kind of efforts.
Absolutely.
So that's a really interesting point. We do have one question. I'm really excited. Someone's decided to engage. Hey. So the question is all around the role of music. And Andy, I'm going to come to you in this one. So, what about the role of music in film? And is this something you guys take into account as well?
In the sense of, does it add to the quality of the entry? Yeah, I think that's the context of the question. And it's like, yeah, of course. I mean, the choice of music, any campaign, anything we do at the moment, any experience is an art in itself. And I always think back. Some people will know the Gears of War game that's on the Xbox. So I'm going off on a tangent. But the trailer that came out with the film was all about gaming. But what Microsoft did when they wanted to push the sales even more was they put Mad World, but the Tears for Fears, Gary Jules somewhere, and it took the game into this cinematic feast just through the choice of music. I mean, music, we know more than any other kind of sort of passion point has the opportunity to emotionally engage and stir the heartstrings. So yeah, I think choice of music is really essential. Now, clearly, the ideal is it relates to the campaign somehow, and that has it's drawing on a theme. So yeah, I think music is really important. It could make a difference, as Shara and Jerry said at the start, when you're doing that shortlisting stage and you're going through a fast process of digesting and looking at videos. A compelling piece of music that brings it alive could be a real deal changer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it's funny. Luckily, in the Twitter one, they didn't play the bagpipes all the way through. Horrible. What's your take on that?
Me, sorry.
Sha.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know. It's fine. It might be the connection. Who knows?
That's all right. I think, yeah, of course, music is will bring a sense of emotion to it. I think from an out-of-home perspective, the out-of-home channel is so visual that I think, a video montage with or without music is probably not a deal breaker. But I do welcome the videos and the visuals, and it doesn't need to be an all singing, all dancing video piece of content. It can be a PDF or, as I say, a montage of kind of proof of installation. But yeah, for me, it's not a massive deal breaker.
Yeah.
No,
Jerry.
I was just going to say, in the context of experience where a lot of the time you're trying to get across the energy within the room or within whatever you delivered, any sort of sensory stimulation is incredibly important. And I think, music for us is almost as important as the film. It kind of really drives that piece, and it sort of pulls people into the experience you delivered. And I think, we see that it's either uplifting or it's really somber, or, it has all these emotions that it evokes. And I think you can really play on that. To your point, Andy, if you connect that right piece of music with the right film, then it just blow people away. And I think it has a huge impact, especially on certain types of entries.
Yeah, definitely. I think at the moment we're all very reliant on our music, aren't we? And I think particularly for the Experience Awards, I think that's, it's emotive, it's experiential. You're right, Sham, when you see an out-of-home campaign, you can see it because it's visual and you're just kind of getting the narrative behind it. Whereas I suppose on the event side, it's maybe, it's skewed slightly, maybe it strengthens an entry. So I kind of, I take that. I think that makes a lot of sense. We do have a comment in where Steph was saying that she worked with a brand on an entry once where the brand was Ancient. They paid for the entry and they had a large in-house team, but they didn't want to credit the agency. Name and shame that brand. We'll make sure Sha sends them a note. So when it comes to, you're talking about emotion here. So obviously, I keep saying to everyone, I keep reminding everyone that's tuning in, our judges are human. You're human beings. So I think, I would suggest that's probably a really good place to start, is like how you trigger emotion, whether it be fear, whether it be excitement, whether it be sadness, whatever it might be. I think it definitely, you need something to kind of entertain. And I told the story once that we had an entry. And I hope you didn't tune into the last webinar because I'm telling the same story. So apologies if you've heard it a second time. But we had the Chip Shop Awards, and it was an entry where this company had submitted a film for, it was all about having a break, have a Kit Kat type thing. But the film was shockingly bad. It was awful. But it was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek entry. And what they had done, they sent in the judges some Kit Kats. So the judges would eat the Kit Kat. But the whole point was, the way they kind of done it is the video was so boring nobody would ever watch it, but they watched it all because they were just so engrossed in eating their Kit Kat. So it kind of won for the kind of flippance and the sort of cheekiness and the way they sort of, they pulled the veil over their eyes, basically. So the next thing I want to touch on is supporting information. So you've got the entry, it's something really well crafted, it reads really nice, lovely story, you're very engaged. What kind of other evidence should people put in? I mean, this is a kind of like, I suppose, a very open question. But, Jerry, what would you say? What kind of stuff would you want to see to enhance an entry?
Depends on the category, really. I think, a lot of the time, as I said before, you're judging ideas, but then you're also judging impact. So you want to make sure that there was a measurable difference that the campaign delivered. And I think you really want to dive into the numbers a little bit to understand how well the campaign performed. And I think, sort of one or two big numbers like reaching 3 or 4 billion people, which is more than half the population, is nice, but isn't really enough, I think, for the audience or for us to understand how impactful it was. So I think that's really important, as well as the insight, the problem that you're trying to solve. And then I think as much as you can, whether that's film content or imagery, etc., to give us a really good understanding of what the project was, how it worked, all of those things, because a lot of the time we're not necessarily familiar with it unless it's been really popular or heavily promoted beforehand. So I think we're trying to consume as much as we can to get a really broad context of the project and everything that was involved in that project as quickly as possible.
And Shah?
I think, a nice addition from my side is always either, a quote from a client or a stakeholder. I think from a results point of view, big numbers and volume metrics are great and obviously very powerful to tell the story. But I think quite often just hearing about how a campaign has impacted, a business from a client or stakeholder perspective is always really nice to read.
Yeah. And Andy, what about you?
Yeah, so I think, yeah, I mean, I'm touching on that again. Client testimonials are, all testimonials full stop. It doesn't always have to be from the client. It can be from other stakeholders involved in it. Always very interesting, but just, make sure they're robust, testimonials. I've seen awards entries where it'll say, reading between the lines, the client thought it was really good, which is not quite as powerful as saying something like, this transformed our business, this exceeded targets, Yeah, they delivered. I've seen somewhere say that they delivered it on budget, on time, and it's like, okay, great, well done, but shouldn't we all be doing that? So it's not patronising those entries, but just if you've got a really meaty client testimonial, I think that's really, really essential. The other thing, which actually just when I was listening about the data and results, I haven't seen it yet in any awards entries yet, but we talk about data visualization and things like dashboards and infographics. Most entries tend to be Word format, which often get lost. There's no reason why you shouldn't be bringing. That's another way to make these things stand out. Is find a way of bringing the results to life through data visualization or a really interesting infographic. I think that would be quite an interesting thing, and don't often see that on awards entries.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point actually, because I suppose people are trying to innovate as they go through the entry. I mean, one of the things that we've kind of noticed in the past is where, Jerry, you said it, when people present numbers, they don't often put context. So they might say, we grew by 34%. 34% of what? Like, I don't even know. Is it of who? Like, what is that? So I think it's putting context and maybe putting sources of where you get those stats as well, just to sort of solidify, because we've often had situations, not that many, where maybe the judges are like, I don't believe the stats. So sometimes they've got the credibility to phone up the juror, the ancient, and the jury can chat to them. So we've done that a couple of times when there's been a bit of a, we have disqualified people before for lying. Or actually, it was more in the creative awards where people submitted stuff that never ran. That was many moons ago. So we kind of knocked that out of touch, and people stopped doing it now. And then coming to what you're saying, Andy, about the testimonials, I think, I don't know if you would agree, sometimes if you can get the client testimonial to skew to the entry. So sometimes it's a very generic testimonial a client gives. It's a great campaign, it did this, but if someone was entering a particular category, it's often quite good to talk about that experience or that out of home campaign in that way. Anybody want to touch on that point?
Well, just to say, no, absolutely. I mean, if you can get them to do it specific to that entry, and they shouldn't, everyone benefits from an awards entry, particularly if it wins. It's a benefit for client, for intermediaries, for partners, for the agency. So I don't think you would find many clients or agency partners that are going to say no to that. And you can spot a million miles away. I mean, there are agencies that have testimonials on their landing page, which you then see an awards entry, and you're like, okay, that's just a cut and paste. You know, that's a very generic one. So I think, it's be tailored, be bespoke with it, you know.
Yeah, be a little bit elegant with your testimonials. So Shan, I'm going to come to you now. So we have chosen a piece of work that you really liked. We're going to show everyone what this is, and then once we watch it, you can maybe give context around it. And the reason for everyone else, the reason that we're showing the work like this is often people will ask why they didn't win, and we sometimes we don't know because there were so many entries, only the best ones kind of got discussed. So it's quite good to give you the sort of idea of what good looks like. So we're going to play this. We're all going to go mute again, and I will remember to unmute this time. So here goes.
So is that really a live call? That would be somebody calling in?
Yeah.
200 calls every night?
Yeah. Because it just like basically hits home like that it is this much of an issue.
It's such a tragedy that people need to reach out, so thank God something's there.
If my boy knew about that back in the day, he would have called it and tell you, you know something.
Wow, so a pretty powerful piece of work there, Sha. I think everybody can see right away why you were drawn to this, but do you want to give a little bit more context around that?
Yeah, so this was an example of a campaign where we just felt out of home was the perfect channel for it. You know, not only did it deliver awareness and impact of a real world problem at scale, it showed real strategic application of the out of home channel and delivered such powerful messaging. You know, from the judge's perspective, it really showcased the power of out of home and how simple messaging can make steps towards change. And in this instance, you know, shattering that stigma of reaching out. And the campaign raised, you know, great awareness of the available support that is out there, which was so important to them. I think from a creative execution point of view, you know, this messaging really made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It really moved all of the judges. And I think it was a great example of how real-time data can be used in a really relevant and effective way. You know, the real-time and dynamic element of an out-of-home campaign doesn't have to be overcomplicated. And I think this was just a great example of how relevant data can be there for a reason and is not just seen as an add-on. I don't think that this campaign had the strongest results in the category, but the judges just felt from a strategic application of the channel and the delivery of such strong messaging that it was just such a clear winner, and it really kind of deserved to be awarded that award.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I mean, it is, you can tell it's a really good entry, and even, you know, from that video. But I suppose one of the things, and I would like to give a bit of reassurance to people who are watching, you know, sometimes people will often say to us, yeah, but it was charity, that's why it won, or it was a big budget, that's why it won, or it was like, you know, I suppose as well, it's again on the defensive. When you don't win, you pick holes and why other things did, and that's completely human nature and natural. But what would you say when it comes to the likes of consumer versus B2B entries? Because a lot of people think, you know, how can I be really creative? Like, I've got a really, like, I hate to say it, but a really boring B2B client, you know, on the face of it. And I've done something quite cool, but, you know, are the judges going to care? So, Andy, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, I think it just comes back to what we were saying earlier about, you know, a good idea is a good idea, and you know, it doesn't matter what category. And when I did the Experience Awards 2 years ago, the Chairman's Award went to a brand. It was E.ON. You know, it's an energy brand. It's in the energy sector, which, as we know, is a very low interest category. How can you get people excited about what utilities they're going to use? yet the idea was beautiful. And I think you know, it would have been very easy to say, oh, look at the awards entry and go, oh, it's you know, it's an energy provider. I'll skim through this one. But no, I mean, the awards entry was really well written.
Yeah.
It you know, it had nothing to do with the quality of the idea. It was really exciting. There was real insight. There's very real powerful truth behind it. So I think there's no category, or whether it's B2B or B2C, that doesn't warrant you know people investing time in it if the idea is strong.
Okay, well, thank you for clearing that up there. And I have to say, I'm really excited about energy because my heating's always on in Scotland. Although it's not on today because it's really nice weather. It's very exciting. So someone's asking a question around the most common mistakes. But before we come to that, before we come to what are the most common mistakes that you've seen, obviously I said earlier, we're all human, of course. So I want to know about your mistakes. So let's forget other things you're seeing. Is there a blunder you've ever made and you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe I will never do that again? I'm not going to put anyone on the spot. I'm just going to open it up. Raise your hands if you've made a mistake. Okay, Jerry, let's come to you. Oh, Jerry, you're on mute still. I think he's on mute. You're on mute. I know I can't hear you. Is this just your way of avoiding the question? Right, well, he's sorting himself out. Shall, let's come to you. And Jerry, if you can't get in, you might want to leave and come back because then you might get your volume back.
So for me, it kind of goes back to that that planning and setting aside enough time. But I've definitely in the past maybe not applied the right category to my piece of work and maybe not selected the most appropriate or effective category to tell that story. At the time, I didn't realise that actually the judges can step in and move entries around. But I think a really valuable learning for me was to definitely take time at the beginning of the process to select the right category to help you tell your story.
Okay, thank you for that. Very honest feedback there. And Andy, let's come to you.
I think mine's an attention to detail one. So I can remember, I'm not going to mention the brand or
yeah, that's safe. Don't do that.
It was a mistake when we were raving about how much people had engaged with our experience, how much they were socially sharing it and talking about it and liking it on their Instagram and their Twitter feeds. And the numbers we were talking like it's been liked, many hundreds of thousands of times. It's been shared hundreds of thousands of times. And then the image that I chose to go with the awards entry was chosen from the very start of the campaign. So I was more excited about the image itself. And I hadn't checked to look, and I think it said on Twitter that it had been liked once and shared twice. So, that's where the judges go, hang on a second, are they making up these numbers? And it was only the best image possible, but I hadn't checked the details. And it was actually observed by the jury, just saying that, if you're going to enter this and you're going to say that, at least have an image that matches what you say happened. So yeah.
Exactly. You're like, honestly, no, it did. I had millions of views. Well, thank you for that. And Jerry, I don't know if you've got your volume back yet. No, still not. Don't worry, we're going to get you back. And when we do, I'm going to ask you that question. You're not getting off the spot quite yet. So we're going to move on to, he's left the room, so he'll be back in a minute, hopefully with sound. So we're going to talk a little bit about other mistakes. So people are saying, like, what other mistakes do you see in an entry that kind of either puts you off or you think deters from the quality? So Shah, let's start with you.
Going back to what I said earlier, for me, it's around spelling and grammar. And I think it's so frustrating to read such a great entry with amazing storytelling and then have the odd typo or spelling error throughout. So really just hitting home on that putting enough time aside to do double checking, triple checking, get somebody else to check your work, because the attention to detail really does stand out when you're reading so many entries. It's quite a basic one, but you certainly won't make the same mistake twice.
Yeah, and just to pick you up on that then, so and this is quite a dangerous question to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So if someone did have spelling mistakes, but their entry was brilliant, like really amazing, you couldn't discount it, would they still win?
I think it would definitely cause, a conversation between the judges. I think you'd have some people sitting on the fence and some people probably saying, they haven't paid enough attention to the details, so it's taking a back seat. So I think it will definitely cause, some debate.
Some debate, wow, because it's really interesting because a lot of judges that I work with, like it really bugs them, but they wouldn't ever mark it down for it. So it's really interesting to hear you say it, and I think it's good for people to be aware because you don't know who is going to read that entry and whether they're going to be hacked off or they're going to be fine. And Jerry, you're back with us. Hello.
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to park that question a second for you, and I'm going to go to Andy to follow up on Shaz's note about the common mistakes that you see.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that I see is the cut and paste mentality, particularly if people are entering multiple categories. And and I've been guilty of that in the past. I can remember being asked to enter, like put an award into like 15 categories, and you go, oh, you write the same intro, you cut and paste, but it stands out mild because you've got to remember that quite often the judges will often be looking at same categories that you've entered into. So you can spot a mile away, patterns and go, that literally is just a cut and paste, and all they've done is just change the title. And back to Charles' point, I think the reason why the punctuation and grammar beyond people's personal preferences about getting it right is because it shows that you've rushed it, you haven't really put a lot of love into it. So I think cut and paste is definitely a big no-no. And it's not saying you have to rewrite every entry from start to finish. It's just tailoring specific to the category that you're entering. Yeah.
Okay. And Jerry, then you've got two questions. So your question is, what mistake have you made? And also, what mistakes do you commonly see? And it could be the same thing, who knows?
I think, one thing that we sort of commonly see that, we've definitely been guilty of is, as I mentioned before, just complexity. And I think, we're so passionate about the projects we enter. We just want everyone to know everything that went into it. And so you end up really confusing the judges like myself because there's just so much there and you're trying to sift through all of these different things to get to the nugget of the idea. And I think, we do really simple things as an agency, but we also do relatively complex ones. And the sort of, the onus is generally, let's put it all in there. And I think it took us a while to really strike that balance of how do we sort of demonstrate the scale of the project, but do it in a way that's really simple that people can sort of digest and understand. And I think that's both what we see sometimes. You really try and you're struggling to really figure out what it is that the agency delivered and how the project came to life, because it's a mess. There's so much of it. So I think that's something that, we've definitely been guilty of. And then the other thing, I think you guys have just mentioned it, but the thing that bugs me the most is, you as a judge and even as an award, you really appreciate the craft that goes into the entries, because you're sort of, this is a project that you're passionate about and you want to put forward into these prestigious awards. And I think what really sort of bugs me is just lazy entries, is sort of just doing enough to get the project into some sort of state that can be submitted. And there's a few terrible photographs and a half-written entry, and I don't know, it just feels really just, oh yeah, we got it in there, and I'm sure that it has a chance, but that compares against those that really put the love and energy into it. It doesn't mean every image has to be perfect, but you can tell really the difference between the entries that are just really well crafted and thought through and put together in a proper way, and the ones that are just thrown up there with a Hail Mary hoping to get a pass.
And so I suppose the message is love thy entry.
As much as you love the work,
love your craft. I mean, there's kind of three that I'll throw in the mix that I've seen, and it just breaks my heart. The first one's broken links. The amount of entries that come in and the link doesn't work, and you're like, no. And then sometimes we'll say to the judge, sometimes we'll say, we'll maybe ask them for a new link, and some judges are like, yeah, cool, and other judges are like, well, no, if they couldn't check it was in, and no, we'll work with what we have. It's not fair. So that's a real conundrum. And then the other one is entering the wrong category. So, speak to my team, because they're awesome and they can give you hints and tips on what to enter, because sometimes it's just criminal. People will some judges will say, we've placed them there, but had they entered this category, they'd won. So it's like, oh my God. And then the other one is track marks. So make sure that you don't leave them in, and where people are kind of authorising things and questioning your stats, and oh my god, that's a big no-no. Now, before we sort of round up, we're going to come to the sort of top tips that you might have, but before we do that, I just wanted to touch for like a minute or so on kind of what we're doing different this year with the Experience Awards. So obviously, it's been a really hard hit year. It's been terrible for so many people. A lot of people are suffering, and it's not good. But we decided to run with the event this year and run with many of our awards because it's really important now. We build the industry. We make it easier for people to be recognised because it's tough and it's going to be hard for people to show their wares as we go throughout the year. So we've introduced a couple of new categories. One of them being best at home experience. So my first question is around that. So I'm going to ask you to talk, because I know, Andy, I spoke to you, obviously, and your amazing team at Elevate, who shared sort of tips and advice around that. So that's the first question around that category in particular. And then the second question is around what are you going to look for this year in the awards? Because people are not going to have the record year, but they hopefully have had innovation and have managed to sort of, ride the waves, that kind of thing. So, Andy, do you want to pick up from that? And that's a kind of double question there.
Yeah, so in response to the first one about the at-home or the in-home category, I think it's a category that will stay now, actually, as will the growth of hybrid events, the sort of live and sort of digital events. That's obviously emerging very, very quickly. I think it's, sort of interesting innovation, beyond, I think there's going to be Zoom fatigue. There already is Zoom fatigue. We're on a webinar now. Hopefully it's not too tiring for people. But I think there's some real innovation coming through now. I'm sure with Jury, with Imagination, they're a well-known, established live events and experience agency. But people have been really smart. There's a lot of really interesting innovation coming through, combining things with other channels as well. I think there's an opportunity now for experiential to step outside of its default channel it's associated with, and to demonstrate its role in terms of other channels. It's channel agnostic. It's definitely not a channel itself. It's much more of a mindset. So if people are at home, how can you start combining things like direct to consumer, getting stuff delivered to the home, with digital content and remote content? I think that's where the opportunity is. And we're seeing some real innovation, interesting things coming from pubs and food and beverage, sectors where they've had to close, where they're now delivering in-home services and doing some really interesting stuff. I've joined a couple of times now, Bingo Disco Cribs, which has been brilliant, and it's a paid for experience. It's a ticketed event. So I think it's that how are you innovating outside of just delivering, trying to recreate a live experience exactly as it is remotely. What are you doing differently? What are you doing to tap into things like second screens? The fact that you can tap into direct to consumer and deliver to people's homes. I think that's what I would definitely be looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose as well, the thing to take into account this year is you're going to have all the backlog of the time where it was good, it was all going great. So you've got all that work for both awards that you can enter. And then I suppose you're going to see a split of great work and then work that you had literally not a lot of budget, but you had to innovate. And I suppose it's about, I think as we judge, we will be mindful of that, of when the entries, you don't want to crucify one for the other. So we have to really be quite level-headed on that. In terms of your top tips, so we're going to round up now. So we're pretty much ready to rock. Hopefully people have got what they needed out of this session. So Shara, we're going to start with you. And if you want to give us your top tip of what people should do in the Enter Awards.
I think top tip is be true to yourself and the brand. And I just think have loads of energy and personality that comes through in your entry. I think somebody once said to me, if you're not losing lots of awards, then you're not entering enough. So, be brave and enter.
Judy?
Tell a great story, keep it super simple, and if you can, make a great film. I think they're the three that I'd start with.
Perfect. And Andy?
Yeah, I think it's, I don't know whether it's a tip, it just goes back to one of the points at the start. It's treat your awards entry as an extension of the campaign. But I think if you do that, you're not going to go far wrong. So everything from the tone of voice, spirit, the energy that went into the campaign as well, and ideally the same people that worked on the campaign, ideally to help or be influenced on at part of the awards entry.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your experience. I know that, and I've got to apologise because I realise that when you judge the awards, you spend a lot of hours, a lot of weekends reading and watching. So thank you so much. We do appreciate it, and we also appreciate, of course, everyone that enters. So I hope that was really useful for all of you. And I hope wherever you are in the world, the sun is shining. As I say, it's shining in Scotland. I'm super happy about that. But until next time, take care and stay safe. Thank you.